Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this celebration of the book by Malcolm Weisman, A Wing and a Prayer. And of course, it was launched in person a few weeks ago. And we have many of the people who have been key in making this book happen with us today, and it's lovely to have them. Let me just tell you a little bit about Jewish Small Communities Network. It started in the winter of 2003 and largely just based around the small communities on the Lancashire coast, but gradually it spread across the whole country, bringing people together via the website and email and different forms. And as I started speaking to people in lots of different places, I started to hear this name, Malcolm Weisman. Have you spoken to Malcolm? Do you know him? When was the last time you saw him? But it actually took me about 3 years before anybody could get a phone number to me. But in fact, it might have been Geraldine. Eventually I got this phone number, Malcolm's phone number, and I phoned him up and told him what we were doing. And he said, "Oh, that's fantastic." He says, "I don't get around as many small communities as I used to. And so it's great that there's somebody to help take the load." And I met him periodically at conferences, at the chief rabbi's meetings and things like that over the years. And most recently, although this was back in 2022, Geraldine invited me to come down and to have a chat with Malcolm in his home, which I was very pleased to do. And we had a cup of tea. It was very nice. That was the last time I saw Malcolm. And some of you might have seen him more recently than that. So today we're celebrating his life in the book. This wonderful book that has been written by him and for him. And I'd now like to just play you a little introduction. Unfortunately, Malcolm can't be with us in person this morning, but we're going to have him virtually with us. So we're going to play a little video and then followed by Geraldine Auerbach talking about the book.
I think that, I hope that you can have a glance of over 200 people who are sitting here just to honor you.
Good Lord.
Good Lord.
Right. So we're going to, I'm just going to spotlight Geraldine if I can find her.
Okay. Well, if I start speaking, maybe I'll jump up. So it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you, Ed, so much for making this possible, that Malcolm can reach all the people that he's known all his life and who've come to be with us today. So thanks so much, Ed. It was such an honor and a pleasure for me to work with Malcolm so that he could tell his story. And, you know, it's such a unique story. He knew everything that was going on the ground. And not only did he minister to people, he was their friend, he was their mentor, he was somebody that obviously could help them at any time. He was available any time of the day or night on the telephone, and he would jump in his car. And what was really special to me was that he has helped so many people on his journey, and that so many people come up to him and say, "You may not remember me, but you changed my life." And he met so many people at a very young and vulnerable age. He met recruits in the army who didn't expect to find themselves in the Air Force or in the other forces when he later took over all the forces. He met students at university thrown together just because of the courses and the places they were in. And with everybody, he touched them with his wonderful personality, his encouragement, his dedication to them. And so I really wanted him to tell his story. And as a lot of people wanted him to tell his story. And I'm glad that I kind of found the mechanism that helped him to do it. We found somebody to interview him, transcribed all his interviews, and then put them together. And fortunately, Valentine Mitchell were happy to publish the book. So that's what I'd like to say. We have wonderful people here. Ed, we also have a slideshow of pictures of Malcolm. I wonder whether it's possible to show that for a few moments.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me just bring that up. Hopefully.
And we could move them forward quite quickly. So this is little Malcolm, and that's the house he was born in Stamford Hill. Here he is with his brother and his mother and father. This is his school he went to in grammar school in Bethnal Green. This was the team. Here is Malcolm in his garden with the man, David, who was the interviewer, and Lawrence, who helped with the book. And here we see him in his army uniform, and everything he did had a costume. He could dress up as a chaplain. These are some of the amazing people that he met. This is running his courses at Amford House. Here is the CCJ of Opportunity. I'm not sure who this is. Can somebody tell me who that is? Here is a wonderful picture where, if we could just, that picture where he always tells the funny story that he, the student union representative, had a little beard, and people who didn't know him thought that they were that was the rabbi and that he was a student. And here is the interfaith session in Lancaster, and here they were with the Chancellor, who was Sir Chris Bonington at that, after Princess Alexandra. So here is Clifford's Tower, and this is an amazing thing that not only did he help me do the concert in York, but he got the army out to plant these 250,000 bulbs on Clifford's Tower, which every year in March now flower like little yellow stars of David. And here are the synagogues that he's been to. This is Grimsby. Here is Exeter interior and exterior. Norwich, the consecration of Norwich with Jacobowitz. This is a more diverse chaplaincy. Here's Cheltenham Synagogue and the beautiful interior at Cheltenham. Many of these pictures are in the book, but many of them aren't. We put, I think, 40 pictures in the book, but there are more pictures. So here, he always talked about the pudding evening at Cheltenham, and then they gave him a certificate in recognition of his service there. And this is the supposedly medieval synagogue in Guildford, and this is the synagogue he helped to build in Guildford. So, and here he's celebrating 150th anniversary of Chatham, and this is the Minton Magen David in the potteries. And here was reburying medieval Jews in Northampton. So here we are, Hanukkah in Eastbourne. He used to do a Hanukkah trail where he'd start in Hastings and go across the country until ending up, you know, in in Bournemouth or whatever, and spend a night with each community having a wonderful Hanukkah party. And of course, Jersey was a very special place. There is Stephen Regal, the president, who's hoping to be with us. This was an early service in Jersey. There he is with the chief rabbi Mervis. He's been through 5 chief rabbis who all were very supportive. And this was the long haul when he went to Singapore, stopping everywhere. We'll perhaps show them again where you could see them longer, but you know, the diverse defense chaplains, multi-faith work that he was always involved with. This is the traveling rabbi in South Africa, Moshe Silberhaft. This is getting his OBE, sorry. And there's the family, very proud of their dad. And a quiet moment with Rosalie. And this is Ed's meeting with Malcolm. And here, this is a picture that we took in the thing, and that was the launch. So I think we've come to the end of that little slideshow. And thank you for having me, and very happy to hear what other people have to say. So thank you, Ed, for that.
Thank you, Geraldine. And we've got a lot of speakers who are going to be talking about their memories.
Perhaps Brian could come at the end and sort of wrap it up if we go into
well, we can have that little change, yes, indeed, to the running order. So let me just go back here. So we're rather than have Brian now, if that's okay, we're going to go, if Marion and Maureen are available, to talk about their memories at Norwich. So we're going to have an open session at the end of that list that you can see on my screen, and then we'll take some brief memories from all of you in the audience. I have to say that there's over 80 people with us this morning, which is a fantastic turnout. Thank you so much. So we are going to go to Marion. Let me just bring Spotlight in there. And do we have Maureen on the screen?
Yes,
as well?
Maureen is sitting with me here.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'll bring Maureen to the fore in a minute because I'm on blur screen at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to take myself off here and invite Maureen Prinsley.
Marion Prinsley.
Marion, sorry.
Yes, the 2 M's.
We're amalgamating.
I'm amalgamating you, yes. Right, so we'll all go on to mute and let you go ahead.
Thanks, Ed. So it's a really great pleasure and an honour to be asked to say a few words about the indefatigable Malcolm Weisman. We have known Malcolm all the time we've lived in Norwich, nearly 30 years now, and also have a family connection going back to Malcolm's childhood when he lived in Harrogate with his maternal grandparents during the war between the ages of 9 and 14. At that time, he regularly had tea with my husband's grandparents, who had also been evacuated to Harrogate. And I think we have my aunt-in-law Diana on Zoom, who remembers Malcolm coming to her childhood home in Harrogate for tea. There's a story about his grandfather, who was the shochet in Harrogate, standing in the butchery where on one side there was treif and the other side it was kosher meat, and he had to put the Jews in the right direction. So that was quite funny. But Malcolm's insights into the problems and concerns facing small communities are unique and unparalleled. And we're utterly delighted that his matchless perspective now has a long-term voice in the form of this book, so wonderfully supported by Geraldine Auerbach. And thank you, Geraldine, for helping to bring this book to fruition. I've only one short story to mention. Malcolm was always the height of discretion. You'll hear from Maureen in a minute that he was always there for us in Norwich when needed. And in 2018, during my time as president of the community, we had a complex problem facing us at the Jewish cemetery in Norwich, which involved the exhumation and reinterment of some medieval bones. Well, as you know, an exhumation must be carried out at dawn. So we couldn't believe it when Malcolm offered to come and join us at the exhumation. Having been in Portsmouth the night before, he drove up to Norwich. I think he must have left London at about 4 in the morning. So I just thought I would show you this little picture, if I can get share screen. Hang on a minute. Share screen. Can you see that picture? We've got Malcolm, our president-elect Barry Leverton, who is going to be president the next month, 2 honorary solicitors and our honorary treasurer. And this was at the reinterment and exhumation of these medieval bones. To illustrate Malcolm's importance to us, I thought that I would simply read to you from my letter that I wrote to the chief rabbi immediately after the exhumation. So at this point, I said, I wanted to raise the significant role that Malcolm Weisman plays in the lives of small communities such as ours. On the day of exhumation, Malcolm arrived early in the morning in time to conduct a short and simple dignified service for the reburial of the bones, despite having been in Portsmouth the evening before. He is wonderful and invaluable, and we were at that time concerned about who might step into Malcolm's shoes, because I think at that time he was already in his late 80s. So we're absolutely delighted that to some extent, Ed has now assumed this mantle to some extent. And we look forward to hearing how things will progress in due course. So at this point, I think I'd like to just say thank you hugely to Malcolm. Malcolm, if you are watching this or able to watch it, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts in Norwich for everything that you've done for us over the years. And I'm now going to hand over to Maureen to say a few words more about our community. All right, Maureen, let's get back.
You want to stop sharing?
Stop sharing. Yes, okay, let me do that. Stop share. There we go.
Thank you. Good morning. My husband and I have known Malcolm, who's been involved with the Norwich Synagogue since 1967. That is 55 years of friendship. He's always been there for our community when we needed him. Since the 70s, we've had always lay readers rather than rabbis in Norwich, and Malcolm has always been there to help us find the right person and advise us, and to say definitely no to some. In about 1990, Malcolm decided he wanted to get smaller communities to know each other, and he started his quests, as he called them, getting groups from each area together to discuss what goes on in small communities and how we can help each other. And we remember going to one of the very early ones in the early 90s. It was at an American air base in Cambridgeshire, Alconbury, and it was on for the whole day. The unheard of happened for a Jewish event. The food ran out. I think many more people than expected had come along. It was a wonderful experience, nevertheless, with lots of chat amongst everybody. Later, we had an Anglia Quest meeting in Norwich. We had people from Colchester, Cambridge, and Peterborough joining us. It was a beautiful spring day, April the 2nd, 1985. I'm sure you all remember that. When we were able to use the garden next to the synagogue, take visitors on a walking tour of Norwich, and have a good discussion about the problems and pleasures of a small community with Malcolm. Malcolm was there as usual to give us the benefit of his wide knowledge, and I'm so pleased to say that we didn't run out of food. Thank you, Malcolm, for everything you've done for us over this 55 years at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Marion, as well. We've got some more contributions, and I'm now going to go to, we've got a short video, of which you've seen a little preview earlier on. Stephen Griffiths spoke at the original launch of the book in London, and we're just going to share that for all those who would like to see it again or who didn't see it the first time.
For me, it all began with a telephone call. Hello, my name is Malcolm Weisman. You don't know me, but I'm the senior Jewish chaplain to Ancient Forces, and I think you're Jewish. That was back in 1971, over 50 years ago. And I can tell you that that telephone call totally changed, in a magnificently positive way, my Jewish journey, my military journey, and as I married and had a family, the influence that Malcolm had on them as well. One of the things which is often confused people is that Malcolm was the only Jewish chaplain in the HM, but it didn't stop him being called the senior Jewish chaplain. And he was. There was reference to the fact that we had these moral leadership courses, and you should understand that many military people are serving in isolated barracks, garrisons, airfields, on board ships. And there was even one that we had who was on board the Royal Yacht Britannia when it existed. So you can imagine what isolated Jewish lives many of us in the military led. And what Malcolm did was have these moral leadership courses once a year at Amport House down in Hampshire, all ranks, all different parts of the services, to bring us together, to renew Jewish batteries, to share experiences, and it was all based around a completely traditional Orthodox Shabbat. And so people may not have been Orthodox, they may not even have spoken Hebrew, but Malcolm's phrase was, just immerse yourself in the atmosphere that is created. And it wasn't just in this country, because when I was serving in NATO in Europe, Malcolm ran these similar moral leadership courses at Lübeck in Germany, and we would go to those as well. So his reach within the military was phenomenal. And one of the places that I was posted to was RAF Linton-on-Ouse, just outside York. And Mickey, my wife, and I, we took on the tiny Jewish community in York, ran their sort of Pesach and High Holy Days and Hanukkah, that sort of thing. And yet another phone call from Malcolm. Hello, it's Malcolm. Can I call by, please? I've just been visiting a small community up north. I want to check on the York community, and then I'm heading back down to London. And so Malcolm would suddenly call in and stay with us, have a cup of tea. We would catch up on news about the military. We would talk about the York community, which Malcolm largely left to us to help him run. But equally, he also organised these regional conferences, much like the moral leadership courses, for small communities to come together, to share their concerns, to help each other, to ensure that Jewish resources were provided, and so on like this. So his influence within the small communities was not just visits, but these conferences and other things, which were magnificent. Now, one of the things he did at the moral leadership courses for the military was bring very special guests in. And we did have one weekend with the Chief Rabbi Lubavitch at the time, but the one I'm thinking about was Sister Margaret, who was then the national chair of the Council of Christians and Jews, CCJ. And to cut a very long story short, Sister Margaret said, did you know that there's a community now in Lincoln where we were living? So we joined the community. I eventually became its branch chair. They nominated me, and I was put onto the advisory board down in London. And from there, I was then elected onto the National Board of Trustees that ran the CCJ. Now, this is not about me, because every time I went down to London to the advisory board and the trustee meetings, who's sitting around the table? There's Malcolm. And it was wonderful because his work within the interfaith organisation was just as well known and valid and appreciated. And of course, he and I could also catch up on military stuff and small community stuff as well. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about was yet another phone call from Malcolm. Hello, is it right that your daughter Abigail is at Lancaster University? said, yes. He said, well, could you let her know that I'm going to visit her? Okay? And this is Malcolm with his hat on, where he dealt with the Jewish societies within the university campuses through the Hillel movement. And Abigail, I spoke to her just recently, who vividly remembered Malcolm's visit and could assure me that Malcolm was really influential in developing resources and so on that they needed at Lancaster University so that their Jewish society could exist. So I will finish by saying this. One thing that's not been mentioned, but I'll mention it now. I think Malcolm must have driven something like 600,000 or 700,000 miles because of all the visits he made to the garrisons, the small communities, the universities, and all the other things that he did. A phenomenal record of driving, and thankfully safe driving, I hope. And looking back over these past 50 years, it's been a huge honour, a huge privilege, and a blessing to have known Malcolm and all the influence that he has had on my life. Thank you.
Well, that was some lovely stories there from Stephen Griffiths. We're now going to go to Cheltenham, and we had some slides in Maureen's slideshow there of Cheltenham and Jenny Silverstone. So I'm going to click on a couple of things and bring Jenny in, and welcome Jenny.
Thank you. Now, in Cheltenham, we feel honoured to have had the benefit of Malcolm's interest, his concern, and his presence. A while ago, he spent many summers near Cheltenham, and he would take the Erev Shabbat services for us. And it was an opportunity to get to know him that much better, and of course, the family. Now, as a person, I'm sure you all appreciate that Malcolm, he's an engaging man, warm, personable, but he wears his intellect very lightly. Together with Rosalie, he touched on so many aspects of our community life, leading services, celebrating Shabbat with us, and attending many of our social events. On one especially memorable occasion, Malcolm led a session on Jewish humour and how it helped sustain Jewish people in times of hardship. Well, it certainly helped sustain us. Malcolm led funerals for us and memorial services. He knows us, and he really does know where the bodies are buried. Malcolm has made a great contribution to Anglo Jewry. When we were helping establish Cheltenham Interfaith, he came to support us and the new organisation, giving a great presentation, informative, entertaining, all about Jewish festivals, which delighted both the Jewish people present and the non-Jewish. He had that gift of engaging us all. As an individual, I remember how supportive he has been when I was first made chair of our community, and he consistently kept in touch with the health and well-being of our individual members. Malcolm's book makes a wonderful and engaging record of his achievements. He's maintained an astonishing level of activity to the advantage of our members, like so many of you, and he is an honorary member of our community. He has our thanks from us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That's lovely. And now we're going to go to, well, I know there's a lot of people from Oxford in the room this morning. We're going to hear from John Dunstan. John, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ed. And good morning, everyone. I first heard the name of Malcolm Weisman in autumn 1975 when I started my first teaching job, as it happens, in Cheltenham. He was spoken about there not only with respect and with awe, but with love. for to the tiny Jewish community there, he was a lifeline. That was, as we know, nearly 50 years ago or more. Since then, we've all come to recognize that he was also that lifeline to innumerable other small communities. In 1994, I had the privilege of founding the choir of the Oxford Jewish community. Oxfordshire is its name. Shir, of course, being the Hebrew word for song. Very witty. I only wish I'd thought of that. Since then, the choir has sung at over 120 events, including services, concerts, simchas, and other occasions in Oxford, London, Paris, and further afield. I conducted it until 2018. One of our first away gigs was, in fact, to perform at the beautiful Victorian synagogue in Cheltenham that we saw on the slideshow. Once Malcolm heard about the choir, he was constantly encouraging, feeling that Oxford and the community certainly should be having a Jewish choir. That encouragement took more practical form when he arranged for us to sing in Gloucester Cathedral in 2001 at a service of reconciliation. The bishop gave a long sermon explaining that the church was in the confusing state of deciding that the Jews probably didn't kill Jesus after all. Malcolm then took to the pulpit and started off by saying that for millennia, the church had denied that Jesus was a Jew. And indeed, if he was to be reincarnated today, he would not go off looking for a church, said Malcolm, but instead would seek out the nearest synagogue and say Ma'ariv. In 2007, Malcolm and the then chaplain of Keble College, Oxford, Reverend Alan Shin, decided it was high time that a proper service should take place there to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. They both felt that such an event in an Oxford College chapel would have to include a Jewish choir as well as the chapel choir. Oxfordshire was invited, and so the profoundly moving annual service was born, now a significant event in Oxford University's calendar. One of Oxfordshire's greatest occasions was in 2013, when we were able to host the national celebration at the Oxford Synagogue to mark the 50th anniversary of Malcolm's appointment as Minister for Small Communities, or as Malcolm put it characteristically, my first 50 years. The Israeli ambassador came, along with many other VIPs and dignitaries. Malcolm's son, Brian, arranged a showing of the episode from the TV series Bergerac, in which Malcolm had taken part, leading a Shabbat service in Jersey. And of course, why wouldn't he? A gigantic cake was presented to Malcolm and Rosalie with a miniature model of his beloved Rover 75, including its number plate. In fact, we saw the cake earlier on in the slideshow. Representatives of Malcolm's small communities came from all around the country, and the choir performed a song specially written for Malcolm for the occasion by Josie Patterson, including reference to no less than 54 of those 75 communities whose very survival owes so much to him, and who all either turned up or sent special messages. It is a source of immense pride to the choir, Oxfordshire, that Malcolm, a former trustee of the Oxford Jewish congregation himself, generously agreed to become the choir's patron many years ago, adding to the long list of commitments and responsibilities that would have daunted or defeated anyone else. Malcolm, if you're watching the recording of this, thank you for finding the time to come to the choir's own 20th anniversary party in 2015, on your way as usual from one end of the country to another. As Malcolm himself has more than once observed, and I quote, "It has always been a sadness to me that mainstream Jewry does not appreciate that you can have a positive Jewish life in a small community with only 10 people. I shall keep going until I drop." Dear Malcolm, on behalf of the Oxford Jewish community and all those who have sung with Oxfordshire or heard the choir over the years, thank you. May this book of your life and times inspire its readers for many years to come, as you yourself have inspired and supported those scores of communities for the past 60 years. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Very, very fitting comments there. And really, you know, in the 1907 Jewish yearbook, I counted up that there were 88 towns with Jewish communities then, outside the major metropolitan areas. And now in 2024, we have 72 towns with communities, but many of those towns actually have more than one community in them, not just split communities, but distinct communities. And so many people in London and places like that, just referring to that comment that John quoted from Malcolm about people not realizing the rich life that goes on in small communities up and down the country. We have only lost 16 towns, many of those from the Welsh valleys, little steebles. Obviously one or two significant ones that have gone: Sunderland, Barrow, Furness, not so significant, but there was a synagogue there, and various others. But that loss really is nowhere, it defies logic. That small life goes on, great Jewish life goes on in small towns up and down the land, and in the countryside as well. I know that we have a representation from the small Jewish town or around Welshpool on the Welsh borders, somewhere where you would think, well, how can Jewish life survive there? But it does, and it's very strong despite its small numbers. And Malcolm obviously was very, very instrumental over half a century in just bringing that extra life into the batteries of small communities around the place. So now I'd like to turn to his son Brian and just ask him to round up a little bit of his thoughts about his father.
Right, thanks, Ed. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Brilliant. To be quite honest, folks, I don't really know where to start. I just want to thank everybody for joining this session this morning, and special thanks obviously to Geraldine and Ed for arranging this. It's quite amazing. Jenny, I want to just say something. You were talking about Dad visiting Cheltenham. Of course, I spent several decades visiting Cheltenham for the Erev Shabbat service on a Friday evening. But what you don't know, and people don't know, is Dad and I always used to have a race back to the cottage to get back in time to bring Shabbat in. Dad, of course, had his classic big Rover, and I had a smaller Rover. And it was always a race to see who could do the journey in the quickest time. Dad would go the back routes, and I would always use the main A419 straight into Elkstone. And very often I'd beat him, but it was great fun. And of course, John, I can remember very clearly the wonderful event at Oxford showing the Bergerac scene, which is available on DVD if anyone wants to buy it. I'm not sure which episode number it is, but the book is just wonderful. I'm so glad that Geraldine encouraged Dad to write this book. I've got my copy. Dad has signed it to me, gave it to me as a birthday present of last year. So I'm very, very pleased that it has come to fruition. I also want to send you Dad's love and best wishes. He has spent the last 2 months in the Royal Free Hospital. I've been with him as much as I can nearly every day, and he is doing okay now. He's back at the home, and I think he's going to be back out there very soon. He is so determined, and it's just wonderful. I have to just tell you that I've got to give a tribute to my late mother, because if it wasn't for my mother, and I said this at the book launch, a lot of his work wouldn't have been possible. She supported him so much, traveling to Jersey 3-4 times a year, to Cheltenham, to Oxford, to all the communities, Norwich. I mean, it's too long to list everybody. I'm sure I can't mention everybody, but what people don't always know is that Mum went through, from the age of 40, regular bouts of cancer. She had cancer, serious cancer, about 8 times, didn't survive the last one, but she was well into her 80s by that time. But what was incredible, it never ever stopped her traveling with Dad to the communities, even when she was receiving treatment. And it was frustrating for me at times, because I used to drive Dad mad, phoning up and finding out how Mum was. And very often he'd say to me, well, what do you want again? But just to show you the strength of Mum, it was in 2013, she was at a hospital locally and she was critical. We were called in, we didn't think she was going to survive, but she did. 5 days later, she was discharged. And of course, I said to Dad, right, you let me know when you're leaving home to pick Mum up, because he wanted to pick her up in the car. And I said, I'll meet you at your flat and I'll cook you both dinner, get Mum settled in. So as soon as Dad left, I went to their flat and I was waiting for them and waiting for them. And the 2 hours, 3 hours went by. I thought, what's going on? So eventually I managed to get Dad on his mobile. I said, Dad, I'm waiting in your flat for you and Mum to arrive. And you know what he said to me? He said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. We're at Rubin's restaurant in Baker Street having salt beef sandwiches and latkes. Ah, well, that really sums up Mum's determination, because that's what they did. One moment, Mum would be critically ill. The next minute, they were out having a slap-up meal at a good restaurant, kosher restaurant, of course. But this was Mum's determination. And that's what helped not just Mum get through her illnesses, but Dad also. It spurred him on, because there was this great determination to carry on as normal, business as normal. In the book launch that we had at Wilson Synagogue, I told the story about how they used to have these mega days out. I won't go through it all again, but Dad regularly, when they were on the road, they wouldn't just do one visit to somebody or to one community. They would combine it by seeing as many people en route, because Dad always used to think, if I'm going to do a journey, I can't just drive past other people we know en route. I'm going to go and see them. So very often their days would be made up of half a dozen appointments. It was quite incredible. But my own tribute to Dad is what an amazing and interesting life he has had. And I am just so grateful that my brother and myself, myself and Lucille, along with my brother Daniel and Sybil and our family, have had so many trips to Jersey over the years. And Jersey, growing up, was my second home. And I still have planned to return to Jersey this year to see everybody. It's been a fantastic experience to spend my life around many of the small communities. And I have to thank Dad for that. But also, my original work was in the music business. I spent my earlier career days driving up and down the country, going to many of the communities. I used to go to Norwich, Great Yarmouth, Cheltenham, Oxford, Brighton, Bognor, but it was to promote music, and that was my business, and I did it for many, many years. But in the 90s, the business started drying up, and I was really looking for another challenge. I wanted to change course, and Dad gave me that opportunity. It is in the book, and he first offered me the opportunity to visit people in small communities, in hospitals, care homes, and so I got back on the road, going back to many of the places that I'd been doing business with music, but this time visiting people in critical situations. And it was a wonderful opportunity, and that led on to me being involved with the prisons for 25 years, and then into mental health, which I'm still involved in, and still visiting people in hospital at the moment. And it's all thanks to Dad, because he gave me an opportunity to change the course of my career. Many people might not want to admit that, but I did it, and I took the opportunity from Dad and then built it all up in my own right. So I have a lot to be thankful to Dad for. I hope to see Dad later on, depending on the weather, what it's doing, this wind, that's the hurricane that's supposed to be coming over. But I hope to have dinner with Dad tonight if he's up to it, or have lunch with him tomorrow. And I'm going to tell him all about this. He will see the recording on YouTube, because I'm going to show it to him. They may well show it to everybody at their home. But I think my brother and I should at some point follow Dad's book up with our own book about the experiences that we have had with Dad and our life with Dad on the road to all the places we've been to, because I think it would make a fascinating story. So I'm hoping, I don't know whether Stephen Regal's with us, but I hope that he's here, or somebody from Jersey is going to say something, because Jersey was certainly one of the communities that I spent so much time going to, and Dad spent 3-4 times going to for so much of his life. So my thanks to Dad, and thank you to everybody. And it's just been an amazing experience for me and all our family to have gone through what we have done. And thank you so much. And Ed, thanks again. And thank you, Geraldine. It's so much appreciated. I can't tell you.
Ryan, thank you so much. The lovely words about your father. And it's lovely to have you here representing him and telling us some of the stories behind what you and he and the rest of the family did, and your mother, of course, as well. And now we're going to go to some of the other stories that we've had. Now, you just spoke of Stephen Regal. I don't think we've got Stephen in the room. If Stephen is in the room, please put up your digital hand if you know how to do that. But in lieu of Stephen doing that, we're going to go to Geraldine, who's got a few notes from him. So Geraldine, can I invite you to join us to talk a little bit about Jersey?
Jersey was obviously very important to Malcolm and to Rosalie and to Brian and Daniel. But it was also, Malcolm was important to Jersey. And that's why I'm really happy to be able to give you these few words that Stephen Regal wrote when he wanted to come to the previous launch. And of course, he was hoping to be with us today. He said, I first had the pleasure of getting to know Reverend Malcolm Weisman at around the time of my bar mitzvah. And believe it or not, I'm 76 now. So Malcolm and I have known each other for around 63 or more years, and I count Malcolm more as a friend than the spiritual leader, which he undoubtedly is. I guess my familiarity with him leads me to use his first name, not that I don't respect and indeed love him. I am now and have been president of the Jersey Jewish congregation for around 25 years, and our Jersey congregation has been almost entirely and single-handedly molded by Malcolm. Our shul has been led and directed by Malcolm, welding the disparate strands that make up our faith into the cohesive culture that we see today. For anyone who has occupied any position of leadership within any Jewish organization, one can just see how difficult, no, almost an impossible task this is. Malcolm, as well as being a spiritual leader, is the consummate diplomat, which I'm sure you'll agree with. Malcolm has occupied the role of our religious leader with aplomb and dignity, and in doing so has won the love, admiration, and respect of all. The Jersey Jewish congregation epitomizes the form of synagogue format that is Malcolm, inclusive rather than exclusive, formal when necessary, informal when required, conventional at all times, but accepting of the less than conventional in order to avoid a schism, a lesson for all to attempt to emulate. Malcolm is the reason that Jersey Shul is my shul. I walk in and Malcolm, by his leadership, has conferred ownership upon me. That is the very essence of a true leader. I'm so sorry that I'm unable to join with everyone today in order to be part of this very special celebration. Unfortunately, ill health precludes my travel. However, there is no one whom I would rather honor than Malcolm. He, as much as my beloved parents, has made me the Jew and proud of my faith more than anyone, a debt that I shall never be able to repay. So thank you, Reverend Weisman. Thank you for the knowledge that you've bestowed upon me. Thank you for the leadership that you've shown me. Thank you for the love and affection you've provided for me. Stephen Regal, President of the Jersey Jewish Community.
Thanks so much, Geraldine, for reading that out on Stephen's behalf. We've got some more contributions. So I'm going to take everybody into, going to remove the spotlights and going to go into gallery view, as there we are. And we'd invited people to contribute their stories. And what I'll do is I'll send these out on email, because I'm not sure we'll be able to get through every single one of them. But there was mention earlier on and in the slideshow about Lancaster. And so I'd like to invite Fiona Frank, who's got memories going back to when she was a student at the age of 21. Fiona, if you're there, do you want to unmute and just say something briefly in a minute or two about your memories?
Yeah, so I was at Bath University and not even slightly interested in Judaism, but my mum made me go to the Jewish Society at Bath, and I didn't really want to go, but one of her friend's daughters was the secretary, so I went to the Jewish Society. I wasn't really interested at the time. That 21-year-old would be amazed at me now, having been secretary of Lancaster and Lakes Jewish Community for the last 11 years, and I'm now Mrs. Chopped Herring. But anyway, back then I wasn't that interested in my Judaism. But then I met Malcolm, who knew my uncle in Jersey and just made it all so personal, and felt that, Geraldine sent me the thing that I'd written in the book, which is that it made me realise that my Judaism would connect me with so many people, which it did, like, for the rest of my life, including having worked for Skojek for 10 years, doing more or less Malcolm's job, running all the way around Scotland, when I used to go up to Shetland and Aberdeen and Edinburgh and St Andrews and Glasgow, but and Inverness. But I couldn't do, thinking about that just now, reminiscing on the chat with Hilary Franklin, who used to be in Shetland, I couldn't imagine doing it in the whole country. So I started off meeting Malcolm in Bath, and then he came to Lancaster, and so he spanned. So I met him in 1974, and here we are in 2024. So I have 50 years of memories of Malcolm. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And I have to say that Lancaster and Lakes that Fiona referred to, and Malcolm obviously consecrated or helped consecrate the Jewish room in the university there. I was driving up to Glasgow with Fiona one day, and she said, "I'm sure I'm not the only Jew that's left in Lancaster." And she went out and she found out all the others, and that's why we have a thriving community there.
Let me just say that wasn't just me. Ruth Morris is here. Ruth Morris and David Brown are here, and it was down to them. They created the Lancaster Jewish community there in Jerusalem.
Fantastic! It's there. It's a member of the Board of Deputies. It's on the map. But Malcolm was there at the very early days, and I can see that Martin Morris in Stoke-on-Trent has got his hand up. Martin, you want to unmute and have a brief mention about your memories?
Malcolm has been a friend of the Stoke-on-Trent community for, well, pretty much as long as I can remember. My late father used to look after Malcolm, and then after my father passed away, Malcolm used to come to the house and subsequently to my little flat. He used to use me as a comfort break in between Lancaster and home in London, I guess. So he'd stop, use the loo, have a cup of tea, eat all my chopped herring, and then go elsewhere to do whatever he used to do. But he did the deconsecration of the old synagogue in Hanley and the new consecration of the little shul, which you can just see behind me, in Newcastle under Lyme. He hosted my father's memorial service back in 2011. And a lot of the people that he used to visit have relatives around the country. Norwich, my cousin Nick, I think was secretary there at some point. And the Isle of Wight he used to go to, where one of our members retired down to. So quite a few people through Malcolm, have connections to the Stoke-on-Trent community. So we're all very grateful for everything that he's done, little talks that he came and did for us on various Jewish history, either in this area or elsewhere. But also one of the things that I want to say, not just for Malcolm, but for Ed, who's organised this, and other people that have helped him put this together, that it's very important that this sort of thing still happens. With Stoke-on-Trent being probably the smallest community in the country, we haven't had a rabbi since 1968. So every time Malcolm used to visit was always literally a blessing. So when we had our 10th anniversary, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago now, he'd just become co-chair of the Council of Christians and Jews with Bishop Michael. And they both came up to sort of act as hosts, and Bishop Michael said he'd now visited every single synagogue in his diocese, which was just the one. That's us. So he and Malcolm have always been friends of the community. I went to the installation of the Bishop of Lichfield at the cathedral, and every time he passes through, I get invited to some sort of civic event. I have to put a tie on for that.
Thanks, Martin.
Just like to say thank you to Ed and to Malcolm especially. Thank you.
Thank you. I mentioned Welshpool earlier on, and I can see that Mark Michaels is there. So Mark, would you like to unmute?
Thank you. Yes. Our first encounter with Malcolm was as a governor of Parmiter's School, which we saw on the slideshow, because we had a small hotel in Montgomery in mid Wales, and Parmiter's School governors, of which another one, Rosalie Toby's on the screen today, would visit us biannually to visit their Outward Bound Centre. And Malcolm would then conduct a service for our small Welshpool group in the back room in the back bar of our then hotel, and conducted a lovely service for us. But my main memory is that when later I was mayor of Montgomery, we hosted the Montgomeryshire last British Legion peace service with the Lord Lieutenant, then the great Sian Lake Burke. And Malcolm, as my chaplain, came up to participate in the service, led by the British Legion chaplain and our rector. Unfortunately, the British Legion chaplain had a very serious motor accident on the way to Montgomery, and our rector was also seriously ill. So Malcolm, of course, without a blink, stepped in, took the whole service, and every so often now in Montgomery, people say to us, whatever happened to that lovely Jewish man that came and took our peace service? And incidentally, my wife Sue's mum is a Schneiderman, and Malcolm had close connections with the Schneidermans in Jersey.
Mark, thank you very much. And thank you for everything that you do in Welshpool, because I know you're very active going into schools. And
thank you.
So we've got a few people with hands up. What I'm going to do is make sure that you all get to chat. We've had other ones on email, so I might just send those out for everybody who's registered, just so that we get to hear as many things as possible. I can see that somebody's only got a dot for their name, so I don't know what your name is, but you've got some glasses on. So would you like to unmute and just tell me what your name is and where you are and what your memory is? Yes, you're looking a bit bemused.
Yes. Sorry, I should have the name Debbie up there. I'll have to go back and change it. We're John and Debbie Karp, and we met.
Well, I tell you the story.
Here.
Yeah. So I was in the Air Force from 1981 to 2003. So I met Malcolm probably in '82 when he first contacted me. and he used to go regularly to the moral leadership courses at Amport House. So I know him very well. Ruth will tell you Ruth could tell you the story about Lancaster University. It's quite funny, actually. So when I was up in Cumbria, there was a magazine that came out called New Moon that my mum got me a subscription to. And there was a letter in there one time saying, oh, it's very easy for people to meet Jewish people, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. So I wrote back in and said, well, I live in the middle of nowhere. My nearest community is probably Gateshead or whatever. And they're all from us, and I can't sort of drive over on a Friday night or whatever. It wouldn't be, wouldn't really work and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. So the letter was published. And then a few weeks later, I got a letter to me that had been redirected by New Moon, saying from this strange person called Ruth Morris at Lancaster University, saying, read your letter, blah blah, whatever. Would you like to come down to Lancaster University and join in one of our JSOC weekends or whatever? So I thought, well, a bit shy. I'm not very good at meeting new people. So I wrote back and I said, well, thank you very much, or whatever. But I'll think about it. Anyway, just a few weeks later, Malcolm said to me, I'm doing this talk in March at Lancaster University. Why don't you come down? So I thought, okay, since I know somebody there, I'll go. So I went down to Lancaster. Ruth and David co-opted me straight away into preparing the stuff for the Shabbos meal and doing this and doing that and doing the other. And she's now my surrogate big sister. Well, she when I went out to Cyprus the second time.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I used to pop over to see Ruth and David, fairly regularly, because it was only a sort of less than an hour's flight over to Israel from Cyprus. And she had a friend in Bnei Brak called Marion, and my wife was a friend of Marion. So I suddenly got an email from this strange woman who Honeybee or whatever she was called at the time, and we sort of got chatting and all the rest of it. Didn't think anything more about it. Then she disappeared, and then this Leaf at Tesco net got in touch with me. And who's this? And it was the same one. So we ended up, when I came back to UK, we ended up meeting in Sheffield, and
then the long and the short of it was that.
So we got engaged about not very long after, and when we went to the moral leadership course that year, I spoke to Malcolm and I asked him if he would marry us. So he did. So we got married in Hendon, and he married us there. So we both known him for a very, very long time. It's coming up on 24 years now that we've been married. So I've known him since 1982, and everything is due to him and to Ruth.
And I don't know, we joined a little bit late, I'm afraid, so apologies for that. But I want to thank Malcolm for all of the wonderful Shabbaton that he held at Amport House. Which is no more, because he always held the most delightful Shabbats there, and we miss seeing him.
So thank you so much, and Malcolm obviously instrumental not just in communities and building communities, but families as well. So yes. That's really great. Now we've got Ian, and we've got Michelle, and we've got somebody called Penny who've got their hands up. So I'm going to take that in that order on the screen. Ian, you're down in Chatham.
No, I'm not. Not any longer. Not for the last 15 years. I was going to say, having listened to all of the sessions so far, I think I'm probably one of the very first people to have met Malcolm in his role as Small Communities Minister. But actually, Stephen Regal trumped me by a year, I think. Chatham Memorial Synagogue, I think, was one of the first that Malcolm took under his wing, probably in 64, 65, which was a year or two after I was bar mitzvah. But my parents were obviously very involved. My father then was on sec. My mother was secretary of the Ladies Guild. So I too have very fond memories of, sitting with Malcolm in the living room, having coffee, tea, whatever. But what I wanted to say is I always respected not only the knowledge and the intellect, but Malcolm's pragmatism. Because when my family moved from South Manchester to Chatham, there was a weekly Erev Shabbat service, there were High Holy Day services, and frankly, not a lot else. There was a Cheder, but there were certainly no Shabbat morning services. And Malcolm instituted a monthly Shabbat morning and a bridge service. He recognized that at the time, still quite a significant proportion of the very small community were shopkeepers. So Saturday morning was not a practical time to have a 3-hour service. And I just found him, Malcolm, approachable. I mean, I was 14, 15. And I have one personal memory because I wanted to do kibbutz ulpan after my A-levels. And my parents weren't actually very fond, very warm to that idea. They thought I would forget how to learn. I was planning to do a year in Israel, come back and go to uni. Malcolm helped me persuade them that it would be an interesting and good thing to do. And I did it in the days before anyone had even heard of a gap year. And I just hugely admire. And I think the fact that I'm here now, 75 years old, talking about Malcolm with fondness and respect and gladness that he was in my life for a little while says so much about him.
Thank you, Ian. And now I'm going to go to Michelle Green.
Well, I just wanted to recall some lovely memories that I had of Harrogate and my parents' hotel, the Manor Hotel, where I grew up as a young girl. And I remember Malcolm and Rosalie and the boys coming to stay with us. I was an avid reader, and my parents always gave all the books that I'd finished to the boys. And we loved having Malcolm and Rosalie and the boys to stay with us and have him revitalize the Harrogate community. We also used to go and visit his grandfather's daughter, Millie Siegel, who was quite a personality in Harrogate. She never married, but she was full of fun and full of humorous anecdotes. But what I really wanted to say, when my late mother, Lily Pollock, passed away, Malcolm was very upset to have missed the funeral and said, "You must let me know when the Matseva will be," which I duly did. And Malcolm turned up. I was so thrilled to have him there because of the connection that went back since my childhood and the Manor Hotel days, and his recollection of my late parents, Lily and Henry Pollock. And the first thing Malcolm said to me was, "Well, I've just seen your mother." I said, "Malcolm, how could that possibly be? I mean, this is her Matseva. She's been dead a year." No. I have just seen her at the Austrian embassy. There was an exhibition there on refugees from Vienna, which had been collated by Dr. B. Lefkowitz. And it was on exhibition. It was called Double Exposure at the Austrian embassy. And he said, "You must go and see it, because your mother has pride of place." She was actually on a plinth with film producers, with musicians from the Amadeus String Quartet, and there was Lily Pollock as well, reciting her memories of Vienna on a DVD, and also a plaque and a beautiful photo of her, which I duly visited just a few days later with my daughter. But the memories I have of Malcolm growing up in Harrogate, of him helping the community to still survive as it does today. And for that, we are eternally grateful. Even though I live in Leeds, I still feel very connected to Harrogate and have such wonderful memories of the whole Weisman family.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you. And final hand up at the moment is, it says on the screen, Penny.
Yes, I'm Penny Faust, and I currently live in Oxford, but I was born and brought up in Cheltenham. It's good to hear that Malcolm went on visiting Cheltenham, because he came to us first when he was still in the forces. And he actually turned up in the middle of a thunderstorm. I can remember we were expecting him. My father had had a telephone call saying there was this young man who was a chaplain to the forces, and could he come and visit, because he had an idea for small communities. This was in the mid-1950s. So I suspect I must have known Malcolm for about the longest time of many people here, from well before Minister to Small Communities was in existence. And it was a thunderstorm, and there was this huge crash and bang, which actually obliterated the noise of our front door, but the front doorbell. But we opened the door, and he was standing there soaking wet, but terribly enthusiastic and wanting to come in. And from then onwards, he and my father had a very good relationship. He came to visit Cheltenham, as we've heard before, on a very regular basis. And what I remember, what I want to recall, was his phenomenal memory. I don't know anybody who actually was not recognized by him. He was quite extraordinary. And that was part of his charm and the expectation people had of him. You know, he must have met thousands of people in his time, but I cannot remember his memory failing him as he greeted them. If he didn't remember their name, he knew which community they came from. And I really appreciated that. And the fact that when he came to Oxford, and as I had a family, he seemed to know what was going on, and he made everybody individually feel very special. Thank you for letting me speak about him.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you, Penny. Now then, we've got a
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Now then, I can see that David Browner has been flashing some things up there. So I'm assuming you want to have a little contribution.
We couldn't figure out how to raise our hand.
Go on now, David.
Okay. First of all, we're very pleased to be here. I can't imagine all the people from Lancaster that we haven't seen for quite a long time. John used to fly over to Israel, where we live in Jerusalem, from Cyprus, where he was stationed at times. But the big thing that I would like to remind everybody of was the time that Malcolm came with Israel Feinstein to Lancaster, where we had invited them to speak to the community, which in fact never existed. There had never been a shul there, and our Jewish rooms at the University of Lancaster were practically the only space that Jewish people had in that area to get together. And as John said, we met him there through Malcolm, and we always remembered Malcolm for his wonderful help. He helped us receive, I think, about 30 machzorim for Yom Kippur, our second year, when we arrived before the Chagim, and we wanted to have a service for Yom Kippur, and they delivered the art scroll machzorim for about 30 of us. And during the break, we prepared the meal for all the Jewish people that came to that event, if you like. And it was a wonderful memory that we had. And without Malcolm, we would not have had it. So we thank him from the bottom of our hearts. Say something, Ruth.
And in fact, Lancaster, the Jewish rooms that was the first, and I don't know, maybe the only synagogue the late Queen ever visited. So Lancaster was a very special place for small communities, the royal family, and for us. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you both for
in regards to all the people that we knew at Lancaster.
and thanks for joining us. Now then, we've got another hand raised from Anna and Edna Miller. So if you want to unmute. There we go.
I'm Penny's first cousin. So I also grew up, was born and grew up in Cheltenham. And Malcolm came into my life when I was quite young. And I'm delighted to say that he was the celebrant at our marriage, which is now coming up to 53 years ago, which tells you if he came into my life when I was quite young, it's quite a long time ago. And he also was wonderful with my parents as I got older. He was very, very good with the whole of our family, really. I think Penny would agree with that. He did funerals for both my parents. And just, you know, we used to see him because we used to meet at Amport sometimes, where we went representing B'nai B'rith to the army weekend. So we got to see him there. And I'm really saying this only because I know he's going to hear this recording, and I wish him and his family well. And well, that's it. I just wanted to say a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I can see we've got Hilary Franklin on the screen. I don't know whether she's got a voice to say, but if you have, Hilary, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I will. I first met Malcolm at Amport House in about 88, 89, when I was part of the Jewish military. I had no idea what to expect. And the first talk that we had was, is heaven hotter than hell? That Malcolm led. And yes, heaven is hotter than hell. But who knew? He started me on my spiritual journey. From then onwards, I went to Amport House most years until I left the army in about 99. And then I carried on speaking to him all the time. I'd often phone him up, not quite in the middle of the night, but I used to phone him in the evenings. And he would always answer, and he'd always have an answer for you. And then he came to our rededication in Aberdeen Synagogue because we'd been flooded out. And he came and he was the main speaker. And he and Rosie came and spent a nice weekend with us, which was brilliant. So I fondly remember Malcolm. And he was just such a, I don't know, he was such a joy.
And we've got many more comments that, but like I say, we had in email, and some people don't have the ability or don't want to talk publicly this morning. But if time for maybe one more, if anybody wants to put there, but I can't necessarily see you on screen. So if you put your digital hand up, you know how to do that. That definitely means I can see you. I'm trying to have a little look. I can't see anybody else's hands up. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to Geraldine Auerbach. And Geraldine, do you want to say a couple of words just to round up before we finish and I say the final words?
Thank you so much, Ed. It's been a real pleasure for me to meet the people from all around the country that Malcolm talks about, and people that I've communicated with in putting their stories into the book. So it's been really special. And I think that the last words we heard were, Malcolm was such a joy. I think that's something we could take with us. And, you know, Malcolm always said to me, he said, you know, it's going to be a bit difficult because every community thinks that I only do this for them. And you know, if we put you all together, you'll see how I do it, you know, I do it for everybody. So I think what he's done is phenomenal. The thousands of people that he's helped on their Jewish life, on their Jewish journeys, is absolutely incredible, more than any rabbi who sits in a pulpit, you know, wherever he is in a static place. He's known how the Jewish community in this country have developed, and I'm really happy that we had the opportunity to help him to write his story, and I hope you're enjoying reading it and knowing that, you know, many of you are in the book, as it were. And thank you so much, Ed, for making this possible, that we could all give our thanks to Malcolm in this lovely way.
Thank you, Geraldine. Well, it's been a pleasure to know Malcolm down the years, more recently than some of you who go back to way back in your histories. But let's say that there are 65,000 Jewish people outside the metropolitan areas in this country. A good number of them are members of community, members of the different communities, Cheltenham, Hull, Lancaster, Stoke-on-Trent. But some of them are not members of communities, but still put their hands up and say they're Jewish and take part every now and then. They do engage. So there's a lot of people out there. That is 25% of the total Jewish population in this country. Way more than Manchester. You know, a good competition to North London. So not that small. And the small communities do carry on, long past perhaps the logical end. The journey for me started in Southport, which when I grew up was 4,500 population, Jewish population. When I was on the management committee 10 or more years ago, it had gone down to less than 300. And they were saying, should we switch the lights off? Well, you know, many of you have been asking that question, and the lights are well and truly on. And there are new communities which are growing up or being reborn, or they're moving around the country. So they're not going away anytime soon. And whatever I can do to support the work that you're all doing, and kol hakavod to all of you who've taken part down the years or are still taking part and leading. It's an amazing job which, you know, you've been given the power and the energy to do with Malcolm visiting you and really contributing to your spiritual journeys in so many different ways. So I want to finally say, kol hakavod, what a wonderful job you've done, Malcolm, over the years. We wish you refuah shalema. Be back up on the road now, visiting people as soon as you can, if you can. And I know you all send your best wishes to Malcolm. Thank you to Geraldine and everybody who's helped make this happen today. Thank you all, the over 80 odd people who have joined us today. And I'm sure there's more on the screen than the actual numbers. And have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll send you out a little email when the recording goes up. It'll be a little while before it does, but in due course, we'll send you that, and we'll also send you some of these other stories that have been contributed down the line. And thank you so much for all those who've helped donate and to help me carry on what we're doing and interacting with you and helping you guys out there.
Ed, I want to say that Malcolm is so happy to know that you are there, that the communities are not left in the lurch with nobody. And it takes a maverick individual to be able to do this sacred work. So, you know, Malcolm's thoughts are really so happy that you have spontaneously taken this upon yourself. And it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you to everybody. And Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.